Hello and welcome to the tour. My name is David Dixon and I'm going to be your tour guide for today. We're going to take a guided walkthrough of our teaching distillery, which we have on campus here at Niagara College. We're going to be highlighting some of the cool features, some aspects of the program, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have. So I'm ready when you guys are, so I'm looking forward to this. Okay, we're going to do a quick walkthrough here. So we'll start out over here with our mash tanks. So we mash our own grain on campus. So this part of the distillery functions very similar to a brewery. So we'll fill up our tanks with hot water. We'll add our grain. So I've prepared some malted barley here. So if you're doing a Scotch style whiskey, this is what you would start out with as your base ingredient. So we've got all the enzymes in there to complete the fermentation process and the breakdown of all of our sugar. So this is a very hands-on process, which we feel is important at Niagara College because it's the best way to learn. So everything in here has been designed for student learning, and that's the whole idea behind this. So you won't find anything else like this in North America. So everything is going to start here, and then we're going to move over to our fermenters. So this is where the fermentation happens. This is where yeast does its work and creates alcohol. So follow me over here. So in addition to the 4 mash tanks, we have 10 fermenters on site. One of the really cool aspects of these fermenters is they're hooked up to an explosion-proof PLC system. So it's actually pneumatic air that's controlling whether or not we have cooling on those tanks, and we'll typically be doing 8 to 10 fermentations at any one point in time. Okay. After the fermentation happens, then we're going to transfer over to the actual distilling area, and this is where it becomes unique and different than any of the other processing that you would have in a typical brewery or a winery. So we currently have 5 stills. We have our polyvalent stills here. Polyvalent just means that they do multiple different things. So the polyvalent stills, one of the cool features is that the lids come right off those stills and we can put botanicals in there. So if we were making an absinthe or a gin or something else with an infusion with distillation, we would be able to use this particular type of still. We'll move over here. We have 2 whiskey stills. So if you compare the two, these stills are smaller. It's essentially just a pot still. This is a pot still plus a helmet. That helmet allows us to get up to a higher percentage alcohol during distillation, and that allows more separation of the different flavors that would come through in a distilled spirit. So if you're making a whiskey, a brandy, a rum, or any other double distilled spirit, this is the still for you. This still here is a hybridization between a pot still and a column still. So it has the pot still over here, which will look very similar to what we've seen already. In the middle here we have this packed column. So as the spirit's distilling through, it's going to enter into the bottom of this column and it's going to rise up through the column and out the top. While it's in that column, we're going to have a lot of separation, and in one distillation we can get up to nearly 90% alcohol from 10% alcohol. So what this is really cool and useful for is doing prototyping for recipes, for doing single distillation spirits like for instance, yesterday we were actually doing a single distillation brandy. So we started with wine, went all the way up to 75-80% in one run, has some big, bold, powerful flavors, and we're going to incorporate not only that distillation practice, but we're also going to include double distillation as well. So we're going to look at different techniques, different ways of making the same spirit and getting a really useful learning experience out of it. Okay? I guess we'll take a look at some of the courses. So in here, every week, students will be in here at least 6 hours a week, doing the hands-on practical mashing, fermentation, and the distillation as well. On top of that, we'll get into some barrel aging later on in the semester. So we're going to distill spirits, we'll put them away in barrels. All of the production here has the involvement of students. So when we're making any products that we release in the store, it's actually something that the students will have been part of and can be proud of, that goes out to the general consumer, and we're one of the few, if not the only ones, to do that anywhere around. So why don't we take a look at some of the courses we have here. So I've broken this down into first semester courses and second semester courses. So the semester that we're currently working through, We have practical distilling, so that's the hands-on production in the distilling, in the distillery space. So we enact the spirit production from all the way from start to finish within that time frame. So 6 hours per week, split into sections. We have a sensory analysis course. This highlights spirits from different parts of the world, different styles of spirits, and we go through controlled tastings. So if anyone's wondering how old you should be to enter the program, 19 is the legal drinking age in Canada, so that's what I would suggest. You're going to be missing out on a learning opportunity otherwise. So we'll get a chance to look at that in a very controlled manner, and we'll be able to link the production of spirits with the actual finished spirits that people will plan on making eventually. Distillery operations overviews many different aspects of the distilling world, from the practical equipment to the actual ingredients that we'll be using, talking about grapes and sugar cane and grain and all the components that go into the actual spirits. We'll be talking about safety and a number of other operations related subjects. Distillation science is a course that I teach myself. It involves some of the deeper levels of some of these concepts you're learning, what's actually happening inside a mash tank, what's actually happening inside of a fermenter, and what's actually happening inside of a still. So talking about boiling points and vapor liquid equilibrium, and some really interesting subject matter that will inform you on what equipment to buy and how to actually go about creating different flavors in your distilled spirits. And the last one we have here in the first semester is the legal and regulatory course. So legal and regulatory is one of the biggest parts of distilling. It's much trickier to start a distillery or be involved in a distillery than it is a winery and a brewery for several legal aspects. So this course helps us navigate through and determine the local laws of the land, as well as some concepts abroad as well. So this is a really crucial one. In the second semester, we have practical distilling again, and that's going to be a hybridization with our capstone projects. So our capstone course is a course where we have student-led projects. So it's the students that come up with kind of a controlled set of ideas that they'll get guidance on. The end goal of that course is to create your own product in small groups that will be commercially viable. So from start to finish, an entire spirit within that period of time. You'll learn about marketing, you'll learn about what it actually takes to get a spirit to the marketplace. You'll learn about all the different, apply the knowledge from both legal and regulatory and many of these other aspects of the first semester courses towards making that finished spirit, and the actual distillation of that and fermentation and all the other practical components will take place in practical distilling, as well as other lessons to be learned in practical distilling, some more advanced distillation techniques and other techniques that take a little bit more knowledge to get to that point, like liqueurs. We have distillation management. So this is a course looking at the actual running of a distillery. So we have a lot of how to work safely, some safety training, putting everything together as far as covering some business aspects, as well as what you would practically do in a distillery if you were an operations manager or a head distiller. We have quantitative spirit analysis, which is another course that I teach. It has some parallels with the sensory analysis course. We look at sensory analysis in a very different way. We look at triangle testing and consumer testing, as well as some in-depth knowledge in the actual molecules that surround the distilling world. What makes whiskey tastes like whiskey, what makes gin taste like gin, and we kind of break that down. And then lastly, we have quality control. So nobody wants their products going bad. We're a little bit, it's a little bit easier for spirits than it is for wine and beer, because spirits tend to not go bad in bottles because we have that higher quantity of alcohol as a preservative. But quality control within your process is a very significant aspect. If you're bottling, if you are producing a product, you want something consistent and something that's uniform, and you want to be able to have a repeatable process. Do we have some questions at this point?
How did you learn about this? What is your experience?
Oh yes, that's a great question. I probably should have started with who I was and what I do here. So I'm the head distiller at Niagara College. I've had over 10,000 distillations under my belt currently, and I've been in the industry, the craft industry, for several years. I've made probably close to 40 different products in my time as a craft distiller, some that are released, some that are still in barrels. I came to Niagara College because I really wanted to teach. I have a lot of people asking me why I left. It wasn't because there was anything that I wasn't enjoying. I actually left a great job to come here. I came here because I wanted to teach, and that's a passion of mine. Even when I was supposed to be distilling and doing other work, I was always taking time out of my day to make sure that everyone that worked with me had a good understanding of spirits. So it was actually a natural progression for me. I have experience in whiskey making, gin, liqueurs, a wide variety of spirits, and one of my specialties is absinthe, so I'm always happy to talk about that one.
Another question here from Instagram. What kind of spirits do we have the chance to make in the program?
That's a great question. So we try to cover as many different spirits as possible, and especially with the student projects, we try our best to give students the opportunity to take it on themselves to create something fun, new, and unique. In the first semester, our primary production is barrel-aged spirits, as well as the spirits that we currently sell in the retail store. So one of the first barrels we ever filled is a rum barrel. And we'll be distilling rum this semester, but one of the unique things about Canada is in Canada you have to barrel age a rum for 1 year. Other places in the world you can release an unaged rum. We might have done that given the opportunity, but Canada we have to age things for 1 year for rum, 3 years for whiskey, and 6 months for a brandy. So we find interesting ways of working around that. So if you're here and distilling with me in the first semester, the main focus is whiskey, brandy, and rum, and we'll do different varieties and different styles of those particular distillations. So we're going to be making a bourbon-style mashed whiskey, we're going to be making a Canadian-style whiskey, and we're going to be making a Scotch-style whiskey, all in the same facility. We can't call it bourbon, we can't call it Scotch, but we can still use the same distillation practices in order to learn that. In the second semester, our focus is more on the student projects. We will also be making gin, we will be making vodka, and then several other liqueurs and various things. And then the student projects that have been selected this year are Escabac, which is probably the most unique of the group. It is a liqueur that has, it's known as the gin without juniper. So that's going to be an interesting project. So we're going to be really pioneering. Nobody in Canada makes anything like that. We're also going to be making a rum, and we've been talking about pressing fresh sugarcane on site. So we actually have a sugarcane press here at Niagara College, which is really fun. So we're hoping to use that for that production, and as well maybe a higher quantity molasses for that particular spirit. We've got a group making absinthe, so something near and dear to myself. And then lastly, we are making a fruit brandy. So either unaged or unaged, we're still working that out. So there's lots of different variety and different techniques. And the techniques that you use here could be applied to a plethora of other spirits. So the whiskey style distillations, rum style distillations, and brandy style distillations would be very similar to the process that somebody would go through when making, say, a tequila, for instance. So if you learn those aspects here, you can then translate that into other types of spirits.
Another question here from Instagram. Are there any similarities between NC's distilling program and its brewery program?
Yeah, so we have a lot of parallels between brewing and distilling. So the units we have here are actually modeled after the brewery mash tanks. So there were some lessons learned. So we have some slight modifications to our tanks themselves, but there's a lot of parallels. So one of the really cool things that we're having going on right now is a student-led clubs for both beer and spirits, and we have this cross-pollination of those two programs where the beer students come to the distilling clubs sessions, and the distilling students are able to go to the brew club sessions. As well, having all these resources on site, having an on-site brewery, distillery, winery, and also the ability to make cider on site gives us a lot of variability in what we can do and a lot of knowledge. So let's say I'm missing a piece of knowledge in winemaking, I can go and ask, or a student can go and ask 10 different winemakers on exactly what that process is and what the unique thing is, and we're always trying to push the boundaries for new spirits, new beer, new wine. So it's really on the cutting edge of what's happening in the industry right now.
The next question we have here is, what kind of job opportunities are available for graduates from this program?
So one of the really cool things about this program starting out right now is, especially in Ontario, we're just kind of hitting the wave of craft distilling in Canada. So the US tends to be a few years ahead of us. We have some extra taxation and legal requirements in Canada over certain states. So we're a few years behind, but right now we're seeing exponential growth in the industry. Within the last 2 months, I've had at least 6 different distilleries contact me looking for people. So the job opportunities are not only there, it's kind of picking up at a very quick rate, which is really great to see in the industry. And we have students that have gone on to be distillers at several different distilleries. Very recently, we had a student fly down to the Bahamas to become a head distiller at a distillery in Bahamas. We've got somebody as a head distiller in Niagara Falls, and we have people working in different distilleries in different capacities throughout the province. And we have several students in the program now whose plan is to go abroad, which is really exciting. Because there's nothing like this in North America, and because distilling education is kind of rare throughout the entire world, there's going to be opportunities all over the world for the graduates of this program, which is really exciting, and hopefully they'll pay to fly me in to come visit them. That'd be nice. It's probably not going to happen, but we'll see. Okay, I think we have one more question.
Thank you so much. So for our last question here, we have, what experience should I have to be considered for this program?
So that's a great question. So this is a graduate program, so postgraduate program. So students are required to have some kind of experience before getting here in the post-secondary field. That being said, we've had a very diverse group of students. We've had mature students, we've had students straight out of college or university. We have students that have a detailed knowledge of fermentation and winemaking and or beer making. And we have people with science backgrounds, we have people with marketing backgrounds. We have basically people from everywhere. And what kind of links us all together is the passion for spirits. If you have that passion for spirits, I feel fairly confident that I can teach you most concepts within the distillery. Your experiences will dictate what you actually want to get out of the distilling program. So if you want to be in production and that's your passion, then spending time in here is going to be the part that you enjoy the most, and that hands-on nature. If you've worked with your hands in the past, you might have a leg up on people that say have a pure theoretical knowledge. On the other hand, people that have marketing or business experience will be highly sought after, because having both the knowledge of distilleries and the knowledge of business will kind of link in really well together. And so far, we have been able to kind of catch people up to speed on what you need to do in a distillery. Everything's very practical in here. So when I'm teaching the science aspects, I'm trying to teach not only what is that level of science that is understandable, but also where do I fit that into my daily life? Why do I need to know this information? What parts of the legislation or the standards of identity translate into realistic impacts on the spirit that you actually have? So we're taking all people from all different walks of life right now, and kind of enjoying that. That plethora of experience really causes people to have great discussions and have their own influence on their own learning. Okay, I appreciate everybody's time today, and I hope to see you sometime soon. Thank you very much from the tour. This is David Dixon signing off.